science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction. Fiction.
Mimetic propagation salutations to all you cognonauts out there, and welcome to another episode of Exofathom, the show that dares to explore the outside reaches of understanding. I am Nick, and I'm joined by my lovely two co-hosts. Ayla, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing fine. You made it sound like I have split personality disorder or something.
It's Ayla and Mike.
What's it? No, I was kidding.
Yeah. And we got Mike here. How you doing, man?
Good. As the alter ego of Ayla.
Right.
Doing great.
Awesome.
How are you doing?
Brainchild.
Hey, can't complain. It is a Monday. It is. I'm. This time change has still got me messed up. I feel like I should go to bed right now, but
dude,
I'll get used to it in about 6 months, and then it'll be time to change. So
there was a time change.
Right.
Yeah. Couple weeks ago, but I feel you, Nick. I slept like 11 and a half hours last night, which I never do, but you know, we've got some fires in Riverside, allergies are going up, and Benadryl will take you out.
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah,
sounds
definitely.
good. I wish I
Nice.
could get 11 hours of sleep.
Dude.
Take a Benadryl.
Yeah.
That's the yeah, that's the drug of choice for people in their 30s.
Jesus.
Just take a antihistamine.
Well, the thing is I kind of am wondering, like, did I take 2? Because I felt horrible yesterday, and like, I know I took 1, but even on those I haven't slept that long. So yeah, maybe I'm just aging.
Sounds like
all the time.
sounds like quite the party animal. So.
Oh yeah, you know, I rolled over a couple times.
Wow.
Oh yeah, we are definitely party animals with our 10:30 bedtimes. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for listening. We really appreciate it. We hope that you're having a wonderful evening, or any time that you're listening to us. We thank you. Your viewership means a lot to us, and if you enjoy this episode and the work that we do, please consider giving us a thumbs up and perhaps a subscription to our YouTube page at Exofathom. That would be very helpful. We're also building out our platforms onto Odyssey and Rumble. So be on the lookout for Exofathom on both of those streaming services as well. We're going to be putting, yes, and we also have Verbal, which is the audio podcast. So you have all of our episodes up there as well. We're just trying to be in as many places as possible. And thank you so much for finding us. Tonight, I wanted to get into something that's kind of been in my head for a while. Go figure. The concept of mind viruses. Now, this isn't exactly an established concept within, I guess you would call, the academic or scientific community, in so much that it has been, named thusly. The concept of a mind virus is more colloquial and a bit more modern, but we'll get into the origins and the background of that as we go along. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this subject of mind viruses and a couple other things here. The work from Richard Dawkins that kind of propagated this idea, this mind virus, if you will. The concept of mimetics and how memes work. We're going to get into a little bit of what I think is the most troubling mind virus of our current era. And then we'll get into some mythology and some lore, some Native American lore to be exact, with the Wendigo and the Wetiko. And then we're going to wrap out this conversation with a conversation about how we might be able to protect ourselves from such ideas. So let's jump into it, you guys. My first question to you guys before we kick this whole thing off is, what makes an idea contagious?
Ooh, right at the gate. That's like really tough.
Yeah, I wanted to make it as broad as possible because I think that it'll get the sort of creative juices flowing.
Yeah. Okay. So, what makes an idea contagious? Well, first we should think about the word contagious. Nick, how are you using that word in this sentence?
That is okay. I'm going to get into this already.
And we can
Get
circle
into the
back. You know?
semantics of language.
Great.
So I guess by contagious, I would mean it in the sort of metaphorical sense. Obviously, you're not. I mean, yeah. Well, it could be also literal. So it could be either way you want.
Absolutely. No, I'm being a little tongue in
Sim-
cheek there. Oh, did you have an answer, Mike? I'm
Yeah.
wasting time. I don't know.
You're like the kid in the class who got called on,
Exactly.
like not ready to answer. Like, well, what's how define contagious?
Yeah.
Mhm.
How? I would let's just ruminate on this for a minute.
I like to, I guess, compare it to like actual viruses. So like simplicity, right? Because a virus has a very simple function. It just transmits information. And in like even the best memes or the ones that get me laughing are the ones that I remember for the longest are usually the simplest ones. So if any idea becomes a little bit too complex, it becomes more difficult to take in, of course, right? That's why school can be difficult or university can be difficult. You have to tackle challenging ideas. And then I think too, it has to be able to maybe not all the time, but bypass certain faculties of rationality. So it may seem logical, but it may not actually be logical. But it makes sense in the very least, right? Whether it's true or false. And it like the simplicity, this sort of what did I just say?
Something that has the appearance of truth.
Yes, thank you. I think both are important for an idea to become contagious. Right.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you, and I think that the distinction of the appearance of truth is really, really important. Because I think we can all agree that just because something is viral doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say too, I think I didn't have too much time to look this up. I think it's in the logical syllogisms. Anyways, there's this thing in is it deductive logic where if you can build something from false premises, as long as it's locked within that false premise system, you can arrive to a true answer within that little vacuum world. This is also something I think memes and like again that appearance of truth. Like if I tell you all things without wings can fly, and pigs have no wings, therefore all pigs can fly. Right? If you just lock it within that little 3-sentence structure, then it appears to be true, when in reality it's not.
right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think one of my favorite quotes when it comes to truth is truth only exists in closed systems. So, yeah, if you use an example that's overreaching like that, it's going to be easy to prove in that little system, but you start going out of it and you'll realize the flaws. That's why you like stay in that little area. It's a good word too. It's called syllogism.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, logic is tricky and like so difficult to comprehend because it's so funny how many logical truths aren't logical. Like, they're just not like easy to come by.
Yeah,
Because
they
I
feel
definitely
counterintuitive, right?
exactly. Stuff that you would think on a knee-jerk reaction is true isn't, and vice versa. And I like the idea that you talk about low complexity with an effective mind virus because, if you keep something simple, there's fewer things to go wrong. And so, having it be as concise as possible. I absolutely agree is one of the things. I would add to it that need to inspire action in the physical form. So for instance, like with mimetics, and I'm sure you'll get into this, Nick, but I saw this one meme where it was talking about did you LOL or did you just nose exhale? Maybe it wasn't a meme, but it was just like a post about nose exhalations. And it's true. Oftentimes I'll write, oh, that's really funny. But all I did was like I'm not even actually laughing and I write LOL. But if something's really freaking hysterical, and I'm like laughing because it's so awful and true and you want to cry inside, but that's what makes it funny. It's like you get motivated into action. It's so funny. You want to share it. But it all starts with that physical reaction to that idea or thought or image or something like that. Even if it's something that like gets your heart rate up, you get really angered by or really hopeful about. So I don't know. I think that's kind of like my only contribution to that question.
Would you consider even just having to think it over? Or it maybe not like sharing it, like a mental action. Would you consider that a physical action as well?
That's a tough one. I think when it comes to how an idea gets contagious, I think that there's an act of sharing that needs to be involved. So if that preponderance that you take pause in leads you to ultimately a month from then either reference it or share it, then absolutely.
God, retrograde mind viruses.
Say that again.
So like a virus can lay dormant and then come back
Right.
10 years later. So
Right.
a retrograde mind virus, so something that just sticks in your head for a month, and then a month later, you're like, I'm going to share this.
Exactly. And then that gets to Nick's question. Like, what is it about something that can have it stick in your head? For instance, when Nick brought up this topic, like a couple days after he mentioned it, I saw this commercial for a product that solved an issue I never knew was an issue. And I remember that moment thinking to myself, damn it, that is going to bug me now. And I'm going to save it for the show. And I can't remember it for the life of me. I have been trying to remember what this thing was for 2 days. And it's freaking interesting that it doesn't ring a bell at all. It came in one ear and out the other. So there was that immediate pause and reaction, but I didn't like save it. I didn't bookmark it. And I think too, like repetition is necessary, but I don't know how.
Duplication.
Yeah, like if I had seen that commercial more than once, I think it would have stuck. But I think I only saw it the one time because I was on like some like streaming platform I'm never on or something like that.
So then, would the intention to share it count as your physical action?
Oh,
I think that
really on this.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead, Ayla.
I was just gonna say, like, I think if I had saved it, or taken like, because there's stuff that like I'll see it and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting, and I'll screenshot it to keep it. So I think that's the thing is like, at least in my experience, for something to really stick with me, there has to be an immediate action. Like, it's so fascinating, so compelling. You are encouraged in that moment to share it or whatever. And then I think what makes it contagious is if it's something that's applicable to a large population where lots of people like mentally dog-eared it while others actually share it, and then you keep seeing it over and over. So maybe it's like a fluid kind of thing.
So a couple thoughts here as you're speaking, Ayla. What's funny is that in your attempt to remember something that was a mind virus, you developed a mind virus in the idea that you could not remember the thing, which is another representation of what a mind virus is. Which is funny because it's we talked about simplicity. We also talked about the concept of appearance of truth. I think maybe the better word is proximity to truth, because even I think bad ideas, that are considered mind viruses, they rely on a kernel of truth in order to stick in the person's brain. But to your comments about sharing, and both you and Mike were talking about this action. Do you think that the action sort of lessens the psychic load that the idea has on you? Say, like, because I think about it like, and this is stupid, but like before the Rona, whenever I would get sick, I would always feel better as soon as somebody else got sick. And it was like, seriously, it's like the virus is jumping from me to somebody else, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I feel better. So I'm wondering with you guys, like, does that like sort of need to propagate the idea? Is that like a built-in mechanism of the virus in order to sort of jump from one person to another?
You're making me want to read Tipping Point all over again. And you're right. For you, especially when you would get sick, the minute I got sick or someone else, you're
Yeah.
just like skipping around. It's just
I don't-
awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it kind of is, to me, I just think of it like your Tulpas episode.
Mm.
Where you know, here's something that's an idea, it's a thought, a transference of an idea, and the minute you share it, it enters like the physical realm somehow, you know, even if it's digital, it's still like a bit somewhere, it's been actuated. In terms of the viewer who intakes it and then releases it, I don't know. I mean, that's a really interesting question. I haven't really thought about that before.
I don't know if it's a function of the virus itself or if it's just hijacking our need to communicate what we see as good ideas, even if they're bad. Because it definitely does lighten the psychic load. Like, it's like a secret, right? Like the first time you see it, it's like, oh, this is great. And like, if you try to hold on to it, you're like, but I just want to share it. I just want to just post it somewhere. And then that tension builds up to the point until you do share it. So, but I think it's more or less hijacking our need to share information with each other and communicate.
Which is antithetical to the hipster movement, right? Where you don't share anything. You want it to stay a secret, or you just want to be the first person to own it somehow.
Yeah, well, and the Gnostics too, and all sort of secret societies and hidden schools and all of that stuff.
And Fight Club.
Yeah. It's just
okay.
like, yes.
I saw Brad Pitt talking about how old he was, and he's like, I'm so old, I forgot the first rule of Fight Club.
What's great is that he remembers the second rule of Fight Club.
That's right.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, so I wanted to start the conversation off with that, because I think really that's the crux of what is kind of digging into my brain right now. This concept of why are thoughts not only contagious but spreadable. I think it makes evolutionary sense why, you know, we would be keen to share, like Mike said, good thoughts, even though they could be the antithesis of that. But I think that that's interesting too, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad or a good thing that you're sharing. And sometimes even, like, funny enough, the things that are detrimental become more viral.
Say that one more time.
So I was thinking about the concept of, you know, like we say it's a mind virus, that tends to have a negative connotation, but a good song can be a mind virus. You know, like good things can be mind viruses as well. But it does strike me as interesting, or just perhaps it strikes me that it would seem that the more viral things or the more viral ideas tend to be more, I don't know how you would put it. It's not negative, but just bad ideas tend to be more viral.
Yeah. This might be our our propensity towards negative emotion or negative things in general. It might be like a survival thing, right? Where if we learn the things that are detrimental or that appear bad to us, then we can avoid them. but we have more of a want to sort of share them. But yeah, no, like it's taking up thought cycles, thought processes that could be used elsewhere, though, right? So it is sort of still hijacking that, even if it's good or bad. Like, see, like the interesting thing about viruses, right? They themselves just transmit information, and
Right.
this is exactly what mind viruses do. It's not really good or bad. It's just transmitting
It's
information.
just doing the thing. Yeah.
Well, and as you guys were talking, I was thinking about kind of like animal behavior, like herd mentalities. And I've probably talked about this before a bunch of times. It's like a deer in a meadow. Why is it that they'll all suddenly start moving in the same direction? There was a study, and the deer, they would be eating, and then one deer would look up and point to a body of water, and then another deer would look up and point to a different body of water. And then as they're eating, they would all eventually end up stopping and pointing in one direction. And wherever the most of them were looking is where everybody would head to. And it was really interesting because, one, I didn't know that like animals like it's just weird the way that they communicate, and you'll see this in a lot of like birds, the way they change directions, bees, the way that they decide to attack. And so with humans too, I mentioned a tipping point. There comes a point where something grows and grows, and when there's enough eyes on it, enough attention on it, there's this tipping point, and suddenly it's like viral. Suddenly it's the thing to do. Suddenly it's in fashion, or whatever it is. It's a popular show. And it makes me think about all of the latest research that's been going into attentionality and focus. Because like transmitting information, you're really saying, hey, direct your focus on this. And, I think there can be different motivations, definitely to, for preservation purposes, like, oh, this is important, you should know this for your safety. But also just like a dopamine hit, like if I saw something that's really funny and it really affected me and made me feel good, I'm going to want to share that. And so that's one thing too, I think that's interesting, is to start thinking about and categorizing the types of viruses and then the types of intentions for transmitting it to another person. And yeah, I think that's kind of I just thinking about those two things, like focus and attention too, because again, it's like we're under influence all the time. Look at this, look at that, pop up here, email there. And when you share something with a loved one, it kind of beats all those other competing channels, and it like goes right to the forefront of your focus.
Yeah, and I think yes, but certainly in the digital age, I think that we're playing on a completely different playing field nowadays, because we have something like the internet where ideas can propagate at the speed of light. They're just literally happening over and over again, and perhaps that's why we don't succumb to as many viruses of the mind as we used to, because you just sheer amount of exposure to BS on the internet can kind of hone your discernment. Maybe, I don't know. I think that's possible. I think that maybe we've become maybe some increment wiser as a populace, but I would venture to say that mind viruses were much more prominent back when we had lesser modes of communication. Maybe not, though. What do you guys think? Do you think that the digital age has kind of helped increase, or would it have been easier to propagate a mind virus before the internet?
I think it depends on where you were before the internet. Like I was quite gullible before the internet came along. The ability to just cross-reference stuff has really aided me in that. But then you think about like all the kids that wanted, like pouty lips, and they sucked on a glass, like a glass, a cup that was made out of glass.
A shot
and
glass.
I guess, yeah. And they would like put it on their face and suck it in, and then it would break and their face would be all cut up. Same with the Tide Pods. And it's like, I don't know if it's an exposure at age kind of thing, but, personally, if those myths and rumors were circulating when I was a kid, I might have tried it. But as I get older, it's like I'm going to second guess it. So I don't know if the opposite's true, where if you were like not gullible pre-internet and then all of a sudden like post-internet, you're like,
Post
are?
dinner.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good
It's
idea.
a weird question, but yeah, I know.
I think it's intriguing that you bring up this herd mentality, because all the internet has done is increased the size of the herd, right? I don't know if it's necessarily easier. The internet is extremely young, and I think we still have like a medieval approach to it and a medieval mindset of not wanting to cross-reference stuff. But we can now see the effects of these mind viruses, right? Now you can just go see a video of somebody else doing it, and if you want to do that challenge, you can too. But you kind of get the expected results, whereas you would just hear stories in the old days, in the before
time, the long ago.
But I do find it interesting though. Like we do have that herd mentality though, where if like a mind virus can affect one of us, it can potentially infect all of us. Right. Yeah, and just the size of the herd has changed. I think slowly, if you were born around the age of the internet or spent time on it, like in its culture, especially like on like old internet forums, reading about flame wars, reading about just shit posts and things like that. I think you do develop an immune system to these sort of mind viruses, no matter what they are. So it is I think we're slowly getting there, but it's just going to take time, and it's going to take people developing the skills to cross-reference things and hopefully make good decisions to not do dumb things. Like, I think the dumbest one I did was the cinnamon challenge.
Oh
back,
yeah.
2017. That was fun. I mean, I coughed up a bunch of cinnamon.
Nick has a good story about that, but I don't know.
do, but I don't want to be sued. So
But
I'm
just,
kidding. It was
how it creates these stories that we can bond over too. Like it brings in sub packs of the herd closer, because we're all sharing in this one thing
delusion.
that we all did.
Yeah,
probably delusion.
Yeah. I think that you guys are bringing up some really interesting ideas and topics here, and thank you for a great intro, because I think we can probably get into the definition of what a mind virus is now. And it's defined by the lovely people at Urban Dictionary, because there is no actual definition for a mind virus. We all know what we're talking about here, but apparently it hasn't been canonized into academia yet. But
ooh, you should buy the patent for that word.
What?
Well, we have Exofathom. We could have an offshoot show just called Mind Virus.
Oh, I'm sure somebody owns that already. Yeah. I think Richard Dawkins probably owns it, to be honest. But we're about to get to him. I just wanted to get into the definition with you guys real quick. But a mind virus is pertaining to any thoughts or ideas or problems that causes an individual to devote an inordinate amount of time thinking or acting upon the aforementioned thoughts. A mind virus typically cause all other work to cease unless the idea is completely thought out, the problem is solved, or an interaction from an individual who's not been affected by the mind virus intervenes or provides an immediate solution to the idea. This also goes on to say mind viruses can be very contagious, especially in individuals who work in scientific, engineering, or philosophical communities. And they can spread via email, web pages, or word of mouth.
Web pages,
yeah. This was an entry from 2020 to 2003 or something. Who knows?
Interwebs.
Yes, those web pages. But yeah, there's I think there's a small mind virus that we all experience, and I can sort of elaborate from that is it's the where the hell are my keys? I mean, right? Who hasn't had a moment where they've been looking for their keys frantically for 5 or 10 minutes and you just can't do anything else? And you say you have to go, like you might have to do something, you might have an errand to run, but there's nothing that you could do until you find those keys. Now, that is a function of the fact that you need your keys to leave, but it is also interesting that like we have a spare set of keys. I still need to find my keys before I go and do something. I can't just go take the spare set because it bothers me so much that I don't know where my keys are.
Yeah, nothing gets done until you find it.
Yeah.
The other
Very
offshoot
true.
of that is, where are my pants? What happened to this?
Where are my pants? Yeah.
Find them.
Pretty much.
Yeah, anything like that. Yeah, that is an intrusive one too, because you won't literally do anything until you find those keys. And
Yeah.
you might even be able to be like, well, I can, like you said with the spare keys, or like, I got to go to the store, but the store's right across the street. I'll just leave the door unlocked. It'll be fine.
Right. Yeah,
But
exactly.
like,
But
you're
no,
like,
you can't do it.
yeah, you're wandering through the store, like, are my keys in here? Did I leave them?
Yeah.
I miss pants. I really do. It's been 5 months since I've been able to wear pants.
I can't stand pants.
I love pants. I used to hate pants, and now I'm eating those words, man. I'm eating them.
Whoever invented pants has a special place in hell.
Yeah.
And now we're on the mind virus of pants. You see?
Exactly. Well, you know what's funny though about the going back to the key mind virus is that it was such an issue. People created little beeper systems to find the keys because it's just one of those things. Like, yeah, no, it makes total sense.
Yeah, well, certainly. And so I wanted to talk about sort of the origins of the idea of a mind virus. I mean, this has obviously been around for much longer than Richard Dawkins, but he really sort of popularized the term and the idea of memes and memetics. So I wanted to give him his due.
Can we pause on that for a second?
Yes.
Why is it that something can exist throughout all of time, but until you name it, it doesn't?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's a good question because I don't know what we would have called it before a mind virus, especially in American culture. I mean, I think every other culture in the world probably has some word for it, but I don't know the words. So
I think it's just a need to, like, once we classify it, then we acknowledge it exists. It's like the idea like the Native Americans can see the ships because they didn't know they existed until a shaman saw the ship. So this, what was his name again? Who is this? Who came up with the word mind virus?
Oh, Richard Dawkins.
Yeah, you might be like the mind virus shaman, who is the first one to be like, hey, this is a thing, at least as Nick was saying, in our culture. And then we're like, oh yeah, I guess it's always been there, huh? Strange.
Yeah, but it makes just, I don't know, it just makes me like uneasy because like I guess this happens a lot with comics too, right? Like a comedian, they'll bring up something, especially the ones that don't talk about like sex or relationships or I don't know, society, but the ones that will talk about like a ceiling fan or I don't know, like just like, you know what I mean? Like the comedians that will talk about something that's so random, you know, they're observing ants in their backyard. Like, what is that? But when they say it, it hits a point where you're like, damn, I also had that thought, or I also noticed that. Like, I can't believe somebody else noticed that. And I guess, I don't know, that
Oh, well,
it's just
maybe.
something I want to
Are you
mention
okay?
because, well, no,
Your brain sounds like it's about to combust.
it is. I think, okay, this is the thing is that like, I don't like the idea that like I can observe or note something, but until somebody else brings it up, in some cases, it's like not real. You know what I mean? And that's something I think should be said with this mind virus thing because like, there's something about having other people noticing the thing that makes it valid or something.
Yeah. Well, I think that it can't be viral if it's not being disseminated, right?
Well, it's also your filter. Everybody has a different sort of filter of reality. So it's like it doesn't exist to you, but it's because you're focused on other things, but the comedian, the comic, like sort of the niche in the societal ecosystem, right? To notice things that others won't, and then make a mind virus of it in the form of a joke. And if it's really good, then it sticks, right? Like
Yeah.
Mitch Hedberg is
Every
great at
single one
doing
of his
this.
jokes.
Yeah. I played tennis against a wall. Man, it's impossible, or something like that. I was like, it's like crazy.
Yeah.
No, or when he talks about the Hershey's and the letters in the candy bar and how that robs you of chocolate. It's a clever chocolate saving technique.
Mhm.
I don't know.
But
I
that-
mean, like, it's true. It's true. It really is. Did they intend it to be? I don't know. But now I can't not think that when I see imprints on chocolate. I'm like, that does rob you of chocolate.
Mm. Yeah, well, it kind of reminds me of the concept that we talked about in the Tulpa episode with the Platonism school of where thoughts come from, like being extracted from the ether. They're like
Yeah.
this timeless, abstract that's always been there, but it just takes a human to have to bring them from the ether down into the world to disseminate. Kind of reminds me a little bit of that. But let's just get into, I just wanted to get into a little information about Richard Dawkins and his book called Viruses of the Mind. Now, this is a scathing critique of religion because Dawkins is a notorious atheist. Tell me you're boring without telling me you're boring, but whatever. But in the Viruses of the
Burn.
Mind, yeah, it's an essay by biologist Richard Dawkins, and he analyzes the propagation of religious ideas and behaviors as a mimetic virus, analogous to how biological and computer viruses spread. Dawkins also described religious beliefs as quote unquote mind parasites and as quote unquote gangs that will come to constitute a package which may be sufficiently stable to deserve a collective name such as Roman Catholicism or component parts to a single virus. He was a wordy bastard.
He's not not a big fan of simplicity there, is he?
No, he's really not. Go figure, right? But Dawkins also suggests that religious belief in the faith sufferer typically shows as the following elements. And this is what I really wanted to drive into, because this could be, if we take away just the scathing critique of religion and kind of fit this for just generalized mind virus, I think it still fits. But he goes on to say it is compelled by some deep inner conviction that something is true, right, or virtuous. A conviction that does not seem to owe anything to evidence or reason, but which nevertheless the believer feels a totally compelling and convincing. The believer typically makes a positive virtue of faith's being strong and unshakable, despite it not being based on evidence. There's a conviction that mystery per se is a good thing. The belief is that it is not a virtue to solve mysteries, but to enjoy them and revel in their insolubility. There may be intolerant behaviors towards perceived faith rituals. In extreme cases, even the killing of opponents or advocating of their deaths. Believers may be similarly violent in disposition towards apostates or heretics, and even if those espouse only a slight different version of the faith. The particular convictions that the believer holds, while having nothing to do with evidence, are likely to resemble those of the believer's parents. So just saying that genetic sort of mimetics also takes part. If the believer is one of the rare exceptions who follows a different religion from his parents, the explanation may be cultural transmission from the charismatic individual. And there's an internal sensation of the faith sufferer may be reminiscent of those more ordinarily associated with sexual love. So Dawkins basically hated religion, and he hates religion. He's still alive. And his idea about it being a mind virus, I do believe is true. Whether you want to argue about the morality or whether it's a net negative or positive for society is neither here nor there, because I really think that some of these functions that he diagnoses can be applied to a wider spectrum of mind virus. Specifically, the impelled inner conviction that something is true, like we talked about, even if there is no evidence, and the belief that the believer makes typically a positive virtue of the faith of their faith being unshakable. So this gets into like the how deeply do you believe in the thing, and then also the conviction that mystery is a good thing. So that you don't perhaps know the inner workings of the mind virus itself and don't actually have the answers is a good thing. And sometimes you should just revel in the fact that you don't know. That I can see as being a sort of a mechanism to keep the virus propagating, because if you're able to inspect it, you might also kill it in that inspection. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I wanted to get into this really particularly because to me, it doesn't strike as having to be about religion. And perhaps religion was something that was keeping the monster at bay, if you will. We've always mentioned Nietzsche's Death of God and all that type of thing. And then in our modern secular society, we've definitely sort of shed the orthodoxy of religion, which I don't have an issue with, but I do wonder if religion was kind of the levee that was keeping some of that need for infectious ideas at bay. Do you get what I'm saying? Is there something perhaps that's intrinsic to human nature that just makes us gravitate towards charismatic ideas?
Sure. I mean,
Sure.
yeah. Well, so usually they're meant for survival, I would say. I keep harking back because we really are cavemen biologically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these sort of charismatic ideas serve some sort of survival purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Religion being one of the big ones that helped at least early societies function and be civilized, whatever that meant to that society, right? But it helped it continue moving forward and kept everything kind of running. So if we want to behave as communities or behave as groups, then or fellowships or anything more than like 2 people, I guess 3 people, 4 people, I don't know how many a group constitutes. But we need at least some easy charismatic idea to work around in order to keep going in a forward direction.
Interesting. I like this because that would suggest that perhaps mind viruses are social necessities, that we need them in order to sort of collate into a group.
Yeah, because if you had everybody trying to or understanding the mysteries of everything, we would all be mad. We would all go crazy, right?
Yes.
You need at least a little bit of mystery just so that you don't have to focus on the darn thing and keep, again, like coalesce with each other, be able to talk about something without either stepping on each other's shoes or having some negative interaction that leads to 2 people no longer working together.
Yeah. I definitely agree. There needs to be some sort of collective mythos. Well, that's really what religion is. It's a decided mythology for disparate people to come under and be united under a certain umbrella. So I do like that the function of a mind virus could act as that umbrella as well. And, I don't see that as inherently negative. I think it can be, certainly, but
Yeah.
I also think that everything has sort of this duality to it in our reality anyway. So anything that can be used for great good can also be used for great evil.
Yeah, and sets of mind viruses, you can maybe call those cultures.
Yeah, you certainly could. Absolutely, you can. Yeah. I mean, we all decided that certain ideas were desirable for that group and this group, and and then we all just kind of branched apart from each other and decided to stick with the people that had the same mind virus as us.
Yeah, like the same herds, right? And we all kind of stick together. Right? Again, social animals, and then if you're another animal that has a different mind virus in you, or then we're gonna fight. Maybe
Yes.
maybe our mind viruses just have us.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just thought when you said that. I'm like, oh man, it's like one big game of Risk to the mind virus. They're just moving us around like chess pieces.
No, what I also find interesting though is like sort of how do I want to word this? Like thinking as emotions as mind viruses.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If we're talking about religion, really you're talking about faith, which in sense is love of something that you can't see particularly. And assuming that hate is just the same emotion, just on the other side, because it sort of makes you behave in the same irrational manner.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question becomes, does this kind of get back to like do our emotions like run us? And that's what the mind virus is starting to pick at more, because like when you laugh at something, you reach such a point of emotion that you no longer make words. You make some weird primal sound.
Right.
And it's the same thing
just
when
like
you cry.
It hijacked your nervous system for a second.
Yeah.
Ayla,
But
you got anything? Oh, go ahead, man. Sorry.
Oh, I could just keep monologuing about this, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to hop in?
No, keep going.
Now you've broken my stream of consciousness.
I'm so
now
sorry. I'm
dang.
sorry.
Oh,
No,
well.
but I mean, I like what you said earlier about kind of like how we are still kind of like cave people. Because I was just thinking about how, the brain is just a tool. That's all it is. We're still earth creatures. We need to eat and do the same things that a lot of mammals do, but we do it in a different way because we have this tool that makes up for our frail bodies. I mean, like if you were to throw us in like, sub-Saharan Africa, we burn, our feet get cut up. I mean, we're just like really ill-equipped. So the brain got us out of a lot of issues. We have shoes and sunscreen and all that good stuff. But I think that we definitely relied a little bit too much on it. And as the brain starts to spin out, it gets into what you were talking about with this need to know, because the truth is we don't know anything. There's so much of the world that we've yet to discover, not just our own Earth and continents and our ocean systems, but the universe and physics is like detangling in front of our eyes right now. And it's so groovy. But, like Mike was saying, if you focus on all the uncertainty, you'll go mad. And so, yeah, like a thought virus just seems like a nifty little life raft that can come in and lift you up. And it's weird because I think too, like, about the correlation between thoughts and physical manifestations, like laughter, or even the way that faith could calm a person during a really hard time. It's just, I don't know. I'm just kind of sitting here thinking about this stuff because one of the things that I was thinking as you were talking about was this idea that like early on in like the development of religions, there was this more, I don't know. There wasn't a consolidation of religious power, so to speak. And I think that like when we talk about religion, it just means so many different things when you look at it historically, individually, as a group. And I don't know what that offers to the conversation. This is where I'm at. I don't just
No, you're
wondering.
fine. So setting aside like the humans' will to power through memetics, through religion. So what I got from what you said is that these are really primitive tools to survival, like psychological tools, so to say. So like when people are in hard times, they don't. It alleviates the thought of having faith in something higher than you, that you'll get through it, even if it's something as simple as positive affirmations. Another form of mind virus. It just helps your mind go away from all of the negativity and the stress, and it relieves your sort of your nervous system for a bit, and you can calm
Yeah.
down. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, thank you. Because yeah, getting back to like focus and attention, it's like, yeah, you could sit around all day and you could wonder about everything. But at the end of the day, there's just much too much to wonder about. There's nothing's going to get solved. So in a lot of ways, those mind viruses, they serve as a way to put a pin in it. We're just going to say that this is proximal to the truth of things. Now I can go find my keys. Now I can go find my and I think that's kind of interesting too, because when you think about like existence, there is like now stuff that has to be done in the now for survival, and then there's this other like cachet of luxury thought items. If you're not hungry, if you're not cold, you have the luxury to think of these other things. And I think maybe that's where we also start to have some issue within ourselves.
Yeah, because now your mind gets to wander, right? It's not focused on the necessities of life. It gets to specialize a bit. Because if you think about it, I guess, like most things, you kind of build an approximation on, and then the thing that you're really interested in, your passion, you really drill in there, right? And you learn techniques or things that the layman wouldn't know, right? And that's a luxury from not having to worry about food or cold or thirst. But now your mind has to focus on something.
Yeah, pretty much. And, like speaking of mind viruses, at some point in this little discussion, that song came to mind. Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. And I'm like, damn, that song itself is a mind virus. Because it's like, yeah.
That's that Disney black magic.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because there's definitely also too this issue of willpower, right? Like if you have the willpower to think about stuff and make it so, versus being a leaf in the wind. I mean, like I think all these things are these heavy things that we can think about and would distract us from the busyness of our day, the things that we have to do in the now. And not to say like one's right or the other. I mean, like it's interesting. We've talked about this on other shows where it's like there is a reason that you have people in like religious titles, where they're the ones that read all the books and they're tasked with doing the thinking and adapting and the teaching. And I don't know how I feel about outsourcing stuff that's so personal, but I mean, couldn't hurt. But it's just, I don't know. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
To think about it.
It's like staying in the safety of the village of necessity. And I think you're right about the concept of like you're probably higher prone to mind virus when you have a certain level of luxury that affords your mind to actually wander into places that are not useful for immediacy, or useful in the immediate. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think that you got something there that seems to me right on the money, because you could think of the bare necessities of survival as the safety of the village, and then as soon as you hit this sort of baseline of luxury, you're allowed to step into the mental scape of the surrounding wilds.
Yeah.
And that's when the monsters will get you.
Oh yeah. Well, I was watching this movie. It's called Land, and it's really good. This woman moves to the middle of nowhere. She has this cabin. She brings all this stuff with her, and she doesn't have a car. She's like, "I'm not leaving this mountain. I'm gonna live off the land." And like, it's just funny because it's like, yeah, if you're in like a village setting, somebody else worries about sewage. Somebody else worries about trash pickup and getting the leaves out of the gutter, you know. But when you step away from that structure, all of that falls upon that one person. And it's just interesting, you know, as we've developed, we've kind of like divided things up like this. And now we're at this interesting point where I think more of us can ponder than have pondered before. Um,
You need you
but
you,
there's
you
something.
need it though.
Yeah, exactly.
You need that you need that luxury though in order to have specialization, right? Because
Yeah.
what we're kind of talking about, I guess, would be like where if we didn't have like the agricultural revolution, where would we be? Because that afforded us to sit and think about stuff
Mm.
and
If
then
we didn't
push us
discover
forward.
soap, the importance of cleanliness and germs.
Yeah, where like it takes you you need to let your brain go a little crazy. It's a risk, right? You might find something really cool and discover something new or invent a thing, but on the other side, you may start a witch hunt. You know,
Oh, and I think that that's the beauty of the mind virus, right? It only takes one person to be infected with it, venturing out into outside of the comfort of survival and into sort of like the mental scape of luxury. Like it only takes one person to be infected with the mind virus and then bring it back to propagate. So it doesn't actually rely on everybody going out into that dangerous space. It only really needs one person to attach to so that they can bring it to the safe space where everybody else is at and let the idea propagate.
Yeah,
And
and well, just really quickly, Dawkins talks about charisma, but I would replace that with confidence. If that person comes back and they're extremely confident in whatever their answer to the big uncertainty is, that lends it to be more like received well.
Mm.
That was it.
Yeah, I agree.
so we get confidence men from, right? Or the short term of it, con men.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
right.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Super cool. Okay, well then, I don't really think we have a whole lot more to go through. I do have other stuff I want to talk about, but I would like to get your guys's input. Okay, do you want to hear about? So one is okay. So do you want to hear about Wendigos, or do you want to hear about the June bug epidemic?
Both.
Junebug. Both. Yeah. Do it quick. We can
All
do
right,
it.
okay. I think the June bug epidemic is short, and then we can wrap up with Wendigo. So I just wanted to pull up some some instances of mind viruses in real life. Obviously, we've referenced many that are sort of modern and more innocuous, but we do know that hysteria, and in particular hysterical contagion, is something that we've visited on Exofathom before. We've referenced the dancing plague many a time in the Salem witch hunts. Those would be instances of hysterical contagion.
You can
And
also watch Ashley Flowers. Just look her up and write podcasts, but she does such a good job of like the historical breakdown of those two events.
mhm. Yes, definitely. And so hysterical contagion is a social psychology. It's occurs when people in a group show signs of a physical problem or illness, when in reality there are psychological and social forces at work. So dancing plague, obviously everybody dances. Some people dance to death. You have the Salem witch trials where people were convinced that women were witches and were burning them at the stake or drowning them. But I did not know about the June bug epidemic. And so I will regale you guys with this short story. The June bug epidemic serves as a classic example of hysterical contagion. In 1962, a mysterious disease broke out in a dressmaking department of the U.S. textile factory. The symptoms included numbness, nausea, dizziness, and vomiting. Word of a bug in the factory that would bite its victims and cause them to develop the above symptoms quickly spread. Soon, 62 employees developed the mysterious illness, some of whom were hospitalized. The news media reported on the case, and after research by the company's physicians and experts from the U.S. Public Service of Communicable Diseases Center, or the CDC, it was concluded that the case was one of mass hysteria. And while the researchers believed that some workers were bitten by a bug, anxiety was probably the cause of the symptoms. No evidence was ever found for a bug that would cause the above flu-like symptoms, nor did all workers demonstrate bites. The workers concluded that the environment was quite stressful and that the plant had recently opened, which was quite busy and organized poorly. Further, most victims reported high levels of stress in their lives. Social forces seem to be at work too. Of the 62 employees that reported symptoms, 59 worked on the first shift, 58 worked in the same area, and 50 of the 62 cases occurred in the 2 consecutive days after the media supposedly sensationalized the event. Most of the employees who became sick took time off to recuperate, because of course they did. But that's one I didn't actually know about. So for just a brief synopsis, there's some sort of flu-like illness that goes down in a textile factory, and then this rumor of a bug that's biting people circulates, and then everybody, well, not everybody, but several dozen of the workers are convinced that they have been bitten by this bug as well, and actually develop physical symptoms, which kind of goes along to what Ayla was mentioning before about how something intangible can cause a physical response. When you talked about how faith could calm a person down, this seems more like the inverse, where it's the anxiety and stress that people were collectively sharing in this factory manifested itself in a flu-like symptom, and attached also this concept that there was a bug biting people.
It's crazy. And you know what's even crazier is that like that could have also been a case of like, I don't know, some asbestos mixing with some hallucinogenic,
sure.
you know? I mean, like it's just crazy when you look at these things, you know, I don't know, in reverse, but even in the time, yeah, if it was just, I don't know. I mean, also too, like, yeah, I don't know. That's pretty funny. June bug epidemic.
Yeah.
Is that why people think June bugs bite when they're just really dumb?
Yeah, that could be it. I don't know why they named it the June bug epidemic. It could have been in June, and they just just said it's a bug epidemic.
Weird.
But yeah, I thought that was just a cool little story to perfectly encapsulate what we're trying to talk about here. And I think it's important that they talk about anxiety and stress, because I think that those are two huge factors in propagating, especially negative emotional mind viruses. They seem to rely on a weakened state of mind. They think about like a cult. You know, they break you down, they make you anxious, they put a whole bunch of thoughts in your head and basically beat you down emotionally to a point where they can reconstruct you. Same thing with the military. Military does that too. It's just that we consider one, you know, useful. And but yeah, I do think that there's I think that it's necessary to sort of emphasize that anxiety and stress tend to be gateways into susceptibility for this stuff.
Yeah, your tool, your brain tool is like all jacked up. Heightened levels of uncertainty mean you want that life raft more, maybe. Or when you see it, it's like an oasis and you're just like, I'm going to run to it regardless of how tired I am. I'm just going.
It's crazy too how much stress can affect your whole biology and wear you down like that, where you just want to alleviate it in any way possible.
Yeah. Yeah, there's only so much your mind can take, and eventually everybody has that breaking point. And once you get to that breaking point, that's when it becomes really dangerous because, then you're at the whim of whoever is inflicting it upon you.
Initiated or initiations, I guess, right? Just in the really worst kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Well, yeah.
that thing in the Matrix, right? When Morpheus gets captured and they inject him with whatever.
Oh,
Or
right.
it's like
Yeah.
slowly breaking his brain and his will down so that he can tell them whatever they need to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something to point out as well, that these types of hysteria always they're very social, and so it's almost as if like putting a group of people through that wearing down and tearing down will have really strange effects on the group as a whole, and then the interdynamics of the relationships between the people in the groups. And it could be very possible that, when we talked about herd mentality, that perhaps putting a group of people under that sort of stress for whatever period of time makes them more susceptible to a hysteria.
Yeah, if not handled in the right way, right? Because that previous example of the military, right? They get broken down, but the end goal isn't really hysteria, though.
Right. But they do fill that vacuum for sure.
That's why you need like a practitioner, I guess. And I guess going back to cults, right? Because really what we're talking about now is like initiation rites of different groups. Because usually there's a point where they're breaking you down,
Right.
and then years kind of. We had an episode about that. Then you're kind of like in like a liminal space, this threshold type space, and then they fill your head with new ideas, and now you're quote unquote initiated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that hysterics is what happens when there's nobody to fill in that gap. Right?
That's right. Yes.
Or there's no one.
Or it's the mob doing it.
Yeah.
It's like the mob trying to act as that sort of arbiter to fill in the gap.
Yeah. I think of the movie The Mist. Have you seen The Mist? When they're all locked into that grocery store, and they're all slowly losing their mind, and they get to the point where they just listen to that one lady who ends up going on like a crusade through the store, killing people, or like they get the one person, they kill them. Yeah, it's the same thing. Like that stress, anxiety breaks down to a point of hysteria, and then the hysterical people are looking for anything to make sense of the situation.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right. Well, let's wrap up with the Wendigo, or Wetiko. I say those two different words because there is a difference. But the Wetiko. What if I told you guys that selfishness is inherently white?
Like the text.
What?
Like it's like black paper and white text.
No. Selfishness is inherently a white European thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm selfish about half the time, so it makes that sense.
Yeah, I only see in I was gonna say monochrome, but there's still white.
I don't
no idea what
white people.
Yeah. Everybody's white to me. I don't know what's going on here.
Well, funny enough, the Native Americans had a concept for this that they called Wetiko. Wetiko kind of is a derivative from the Athabascan Wendigo. And we'll get into the Wendigo in a second, but I did like this concept, and this refers to the delineation between Native Americans, pre-European colonists and post. And it's the supposition that basically, and I'm not saying I buy it, but the supposition is basically that this concept of selfishness wasn't around until the conquistadors came to America and sort of introduced it. That selfishness being in the total disregard for humanity, the desire for more resources, the desire for more, that hunger. They specifically mention like this hunger that animates a person and basically possesses a person. And so they named that Wetiko because it's an offshoot of their mythical monster, the Wendigo. And the Wendigo is what we spoke about this in the cannibalism episode. So I won't regale you too much about it, but it's a malevolent spirit, sometimes depicted as a creature with human-like characteristics, which possesses human beings. And the Wendigo is known to invoke feelings of insatiable greed and hunger, and the desire to cannibalize other humans, as well as a propensity to commit murder in all those who fall under its influence.
That sounds about right if you're like a Plains tribal person and these white people who eat mummies shows up and slaughters a bunch of people. I mean, yeah,
Right,
makes
right.
total sense.
Does not make any sense for the Aztecs. We
No,
loved
no,
our
it-
resources. We
it-
loved
yeah.
our land. We loved
Right.
slaughtering and maybe
Right.
eating people. And
Yeah,
we loved being selfish because it's all ours. All
Yeah,
of it's ours.
this kind of plays into like the infallible native sort of fallacy, I think. But I do think it is an interesting topic because they do personify this bloodlust, not even bloodlust, hunger. That's what they really characterize it as. And the Wendigo is a manifestation of this sort of like deep primal hunger for destruction, for possession, for selfishness. And so there's been a lot of psychiatric ideas and studies about the concept of the Wendigo, the monster itself. And in psychiatry, it lends its name to a form of psychosis known as Wendigo psychosis, which is characterized by symptoms as intense cravings for human flesh and an intense fear of becoming a cannibal. Wendigo psychosis is described as a culture-bound syndrome, and in the First Nation communities, other symptoms such as insatiable greed and destruction of the environment are also thought to be symptoms of Wendigo psychosis. And even goes on to say that an OGB, oh man, I'm going to butcher this.
Ojibwe.
Thank you. An Ojibwe teacher named Basil H. Johnston from Ontario gives a description of the Wendigo. And it is that it is gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion, the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into its head, into their sockets. The Wendigo looks like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody, unclean and suffering from the separation of flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. And so yeah, it's pretty hardcore.
Have you looked up images of the Wendigo, by the way?
Yeah, they're terrifying for sure.
Adorable.
Adorable. But I really do love this idea that a monster could be an embodiment of an idea. And really what that mind virus is, if we want to call it that, is this insatiable need for more resources. I would say, I guess resources is probably the best way to say it, because it is attached to human, cannibalism and destruction and selfishness and all of that. So I would consider seeing cannibalism as a manifestation of that, like inert hunger, the desire for more. You want so much that you're willing to eat another person,
or that you're willing to lose yourself for simple preservation,
for that aim.
Yeah. Well, because like I was looking up some of the legends, I guess, and it says he was once a lost hunter. During a brutally cold winter, his intense hunger drove him to cannibalism, and after feasting on another human's flesh, transformed him into a crazy man-beast, roaming the forest for more people to eat. And to me, it just seems like, there's yeah, there's just certain lines you don't cross. And once you cross that, you become this monster. And you
Mm.
could make it metaphorical or you could make it literal. Um, because, yeah, again, I mean, like when you think back on what it would have been like to survive ages and ages ago, I think that, yeah, people could definitely be at the point, to cannibalize or die. And that's a hard thing that you can't judge another person for unless you've been in that spot. Like I've
Mm.
never been in a position where I either am going to starve to death or cannibalize somebody. I want to say I wouldn't do it and I would die with dignity or something, but
Yeah, but it can even just be a metaphorical cannibalism too, right?
yeah,
It's
that too.
the concept of the selfishness being all destructive. It would eat into your neighbor, it would, if you embodied that sort of spirit, you would be consuming the flesh of others, which is sort of metaphorical to just say that you'd be destroying them.
Like the like in what like a in what way? Not in like the actual eating way, but how can
Right.
you?
But I mean, selfishness, the concept of selfishness, or that desire to take from others, or yeah, so what I'm trying to get at is this abstract concept of like the hoarding of resources, or the trying to take the resources, because Native American cultures were very cooperative in their tribes, and so I could see where, if you have somebody in the tribe who's taking more than they should, you would create a sort of mythos around what the ultimate end of that behavior is, which is this gangled, gnarled monster that is destroying the people around it. Because ultimately, you take that to its final conclusion, the selfishness, it would cause the dissolution of the tribe.
And how do you think that would play out now as are are we saying this is the mind virus that infects people now too through greed?
I mean, I don't know necessarily if we can call it the exact same type of thing. I think maybe the Wendigo has a specific sort of idea. I mean, like it could just be a manifestation of that greed and selfishness. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a direct representation of what's happening in modernity. But I do believe that there is probably a certain level of Wendigo spirit in people who take selfishness and greed to the nth level. Yeah.
Sure,
Well,
like
yeah, and if
promotions.
promotions.
So like you have two people fighting over a promotion, right?
Mhm.
Who were maybe once friends at the time, or one person who's just um, overly ambitious to the point where it's a vice, right? Where they start sabotaging the people around them to get said promotion. Is this what kind of what would that be Wendigo-esque behavior?
I would think so. Yeah. It's the disregard for your neighbor, the disregard for your wider community. Yeah. I mean, and again, it is very broad because uh, it probably needed to be broad to keep children in line. But, like I do think that, yeah, taken to the nth degree, that Wendigo spirit is the do whatever you can to lift yourself up, others be damned sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that, and how one taste of that, like once you um, screw over somebody else for yourself, how that can become an insatiable thing, because now
Mhm.
you have the double hit of getting the thing you wanted and then putting yourself higher up in that social
Mhm.
hierarchy, right? Now
Yeah, you've
you
also broken the taboo of transgression against another person.
yes, and you got away with it,
Mhm.
right? And so all of that can become an insatiable hunger to get more and more and more.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, well, even in the myth that I'm looking at here, they talk about once it has infiltrated human minds, he can turn them into Wendigo as well. So it's just interesting to bring it back to the mind virus and to have a myth here that specifically talks about a monster that can
Transmit through the mind.
right, exactly.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
I think that's pretty interesting for sure.
Super
So-
spoopy.
So then how do we
Super poopy. What?
Spoopy.
So spooky.
Poppy? So how do we guard against these things?
That is the question, and that is our wrap-up question. How do we inoculate ourselves from let's say unproductive mind virus? I guess the first question is that you have to know that it's unproductive, right? 'Cause that's hard.
Yeah.
I think you just have to get really comfortable with uncertainty, and like just be really grounded in the idea that like it's all meaningless and scary and terrifying, but it's okay. It's just like, because it is. It could go either way. And I mean, who's to say one way or the other? But I think that being okay, being uncomfortable, I think that's never a bad thing, because that's when you can tolerate discomfort without trying to seek some sort of like external answer or band-aid or cure-all or something like that, which would just create more chaos.
Yeah. I don't know about inoculating, but I definitely could see it as a good exercise, and that would be to it would be to play the thought to its final conclusion. So where does the thought lead at the end of the road? And if that's a destination that you're okay with being at, and hopefully it's a destination where you could maximize as much good as possible for yourself or for others, then perhaps that's a mind virus you might be willing to accept.
I would say good for yourself and others.
And others is good. Yeah.
Because we exclusive or then
Yeah,
we
that's
get
true.
into the Wendigo trap.
That's true. That's true.
I have 2 thoughts on this.
Mhm.
The process that we described is where you get to play out this idea to its final conclusion is kind of the notion of entertaining the idea without taking it into belief, right?
Mhm.
And
Right.
you can choose whether you want to do it or not. And I think it's very useful and important just to be able to do that as a skill. It ends up teaching you empathy, right? You can start to play out other people's actions in your own head and start to trace them back and why they did certain things and would you do those certain things? And
Right.
yeah, maybe. And you gain a better understanding. And also too, you can sort of navigate really tricky intellectual waters, right, of these thoughts. And then the second is sort of like a real virus is allowing yourself to get infected by it, knowing full well you're going to get sick for a bit,
Right.
and work with it until the point where you can get past it. Like I went to college in a long time ago. No, but around this time was you started to see a lot of sort of Marxist ideas coming out,
Mhm.
and it was everywhere. It was surrounded by it. And so for a good couple of years, I let myself think the same way because I was part of the same herd and didn't really have a lot of intellectual weapons to combat that.
Mhm.
But after time, you start to review and like reflect just through reflection, see where these things kind of go astray and go wrong. And then you have now this natural immunity to these ideas where you don't even let it bother you in your day. Like I'm busy, or you end up doing something far more productive instead of focusing your mind on this thing. And those issues haven't changed really since that point. It's still the same idea. It's still the same set of ideas, but it's still distracting a lot of people for some reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think those are like, if you want inoculation, then, being able to theoretically play out the thought is super important. Or you could just dive right in and constantly reflect and see where you get to a point where you can no longer think like that because it's just not good for you.
Sounds like you're saying natural immunity is effective. What are you talking about?
Hey,
No,
man,
but
I
I
ate
think
dirt. I went out
yeah.
and got sick.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that
God.
training your cognitive immune system is just as important. And sometimes you do have to kind of internalize bad ideas so that you know that they're bad. And then once you know they're bad, you can put them away, and you don't ever have to like be possessed by them again.
Yeah, and it's like applying the scientific method to thinking, right? Like sometimes you got to get through the bad idea experiments to get to the good idea experiments, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that anyone should feel bad about should they end up catching a bad idea. It's completely natural, right?
Yeah. No, that is true. It is true. Just because you have a misguided thought about something is no reflection on you as a person. We all have misguided thoughts. We all have bad ideas.
Well, it's
Outside
like
of the
that.
fact that you're a human.
Yeah.
Humans.
Well, it's like that idea too of how, like, if you're afraid to raise your hand in class and like answer the teacher question or ask a question because you're not understanding it. It's like, yeah, you might appear less dumb than if you had asked a dumb question, but you rob yourself of the chance to learn.
Mhm.
And I think that's where it becomes important to, like Mike's saying, just try things out, go
Yeah.
for it, try to learn as much as you can. And at the same time, um, exercise discernment. And, there you go.
Yeah,
It's okay to fail.
it is
Yeah.
definitely. Is this then you know what works and what doesn't? Absolutely.
I think there's actually a lot of successful people who would say if you haven't failed at something, you're not challenging yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
go out and fail, like
Yeah.
Mike said. Yeah,
They
I mean, it's
call
true
it
though.
Fucking up for a reason, right? You're only going to one direction.
Yeah, I like the term failing forward. That's a good self-soothing one.
Does that have to deal with the time change at all? Oh, wait, no. That's fall
Hey,
forward.
brought it back around.
Oh boy.
But time is a mind virus of them all. So
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that'll have to be its own episode for sure.
I'm like starting to think about death and that thing that pushes you forward to get things done, like those hyper productive people. I wonder if they just assume they're going to die that day. So they just try to get as much shit done as possible to leave
Right.
something behind, right?
I mean, I
Maybe.
will say, as somebody who's crossed the Rainbow Bridge many a time, it is weird to die a little bit thinking like, fuck, I didn't clean my car and someone's going to have to see all of that. Or like all of my journals with all my shit posting are like readily accessible. Oh, dang it. Oh, there goes my ego. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's so weird. So yeah, I mean, it matters, but once you're not around, it doesn't. So
And that's why
comfort.
all right. That's why writers kept skulls on their desks, though, just to
Skulls.
remind them
Oh.
to remind them that they were gonna die, so that they weren't lazy and didn't write that day.
Maybe I should do that. I was just thinking today, like, oh, I should do some writing, and didn't do it. I did everything, but I like that.
But in reality, though, when you approach a project, you should behave like time doesn't exist, right? So at least from like a neurotic, creative perspective, where you need
Right.
everything to be perfect. Because
Right.
if you force time restraints on yourself, you're gonna end up with some product that you didn't even like
Well,
from the get go.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's like if I know I have to do X, Y, and Z, I can't afford to drive myself a little bit mad writing something. I just can't do it. So, yeah, there's like a timelessness and a timefulness that is needed.
Stupid mind virus.
Yeah.
It is. It really is.
All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for this evening. Thank you to Ayla and thank you to Mike for the wonderful conversation. As always, I very much appreciate it, and we very much appreciate you. Yeah, absolutely. We thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. We hope that you found this topic interesting. If you have any ideas or any comments, please feel free to post them in the comment section. please consider giving us a thumbs up and a subscription to our YouTube page. Also, check us out on Verbal, on Rumble, and on Odyssey, all at Exofathom. So one-stop shop. You'll find us very quickly, and we very much appreciate you. We will be back next Monday at 8 p.m. And until next time, Cognonauts, you stay out there, and we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.